everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of the Hasura Community Call. The weather here in my city has been rough, so I've basically lost my voice. I'm struggling to find it, so bear with me today. If this is your first time joining the Hasura Community Call, hi, I'm Vish. I work on the DevRel team at Hasura. The Hasura Community Call is a monthly event where we share upcoming features that are work in progress, RFCs, take you over the product roadmap, take you through some exciting product updates and whatnot. Everything is shared with the community, and we also have a really cool community demo each month. We have changed things a little bit since last month, as we are not only demonstrating features that are work in progress or upcoming, but also features that have just landed or newly launched. So yeah, we have a really cool agenda this month too. Our engineering and product teams do live demos of the features that are either launched or are in work in progress. So this month's agenda looks something like this. Tanmai Gopal, our CEO and co-founder, usually kicks things off with his customary Hasura update. He's known for packing in a lot of stuff in 10-15 minutes. So super excited about that. Tanmai will be taking us through the product roadmap really quickly, giving us a few exciting product updates. I think there is something of a surprise here, so I'm super excited to see that myself. Followed by a few product and engineering demos. This month we have Hasura Cloud updates by Vaishnavi and Aishwarya. Vaishnavi will be taking us over the GitHub integration updates, and Vaishnavi and Aishwarya will be showing us the VPC peering workflow. Also, GraphQL-ws, that stands for GraphQL WebSockets. We now have support for GraphQL-ws, and Sam will be showing us the newly launched support for GraphQL-ws protocol. Also, since Lyndon and David are in time zones where the time does not wait for the rest of the world, they cannot be here with us. But they didn't let that stop them from presenting at the community call, sharing what the cool things they are working on are. So they recorded some really cool demos that I will be playing later on. And we also have a community showcase, as I mentioned earlier, every month. This month, we have our guest presenter, Dan Stepanov. Dan has built ProPhone using Hasura and Twilio. ProPhone is an automated business phone system crafted for focused work on your mobile devices. So Dan will be showing us how they built the text-based communication system using Hasura and Twilio. Now, without further ado, let me stop sharing and hand it over to Tanmai.
Hey, thanks, Vish. Hey, everybody. Nice to see you all. Cool. So I'll be touching on three things today. The first is a complex guide for complex authorization that I was putting together in the last few hours, actually. So I was super excited about because I've been having a few conversations over the last few days and weeks about particular kinds of modeling. So put that together and hopefully share that with you, and over time to kind of evolve that into a nice best practice guide. The second is the parameterized query spec, and we'll be going over that so that you folks can comment as well and let us know what you think about the RFC. And then some improvements to our CI/CD, and then some improvements to our CI/CD guide. We'll be talking a little bit about just kind of reviewing that for kind of managing multiple environments, especially with cloud, but in a sense, any project that you have running on a host, for instance, where you've already deployed also. So with that, let's get into the complex authorization piece, which I'm very excited about. Okay, so when you start kind of thinking about authorization, and when authorization starts to become complex, right? The kinds of problems that you're confronted with that we don't have direct answers for, although there are many different ways of achieving it, would be things like, should I be using Hasura roles? And does that map one to one to application roles, or is my notion of application roles a little bit different, right? What is a role versus what is a scope, right? So a user can have one role at a time. In general, that's kind of having a role, but that one role itself has many scopes, right? You have things like hierarchical modeling, right, where you have resources but the resources kind of belong to parents that belong to parents, right? For example, a file sharing kind of system, right, where files have folders that have folders, right? And then there's kind of an inheritance that happens there. But the same hierarchy also happens across other dimensions. For example, very most commonly, you'll have users, teams, and organizations, right? Not just users, but you'll have a user belongs to a team belongs to an organization, and it could be kind of many to many across all of them, right? One user could have many teams, one team could be many organizations, right? It can be as weird as you want it to be, but there is a hierarchy there, right? And then, of course, it's not just that this hierarchy is kind of important, but there's also specific overrides. For example, there's a specificity, right? There's a specificity to users who are more specific than teams, right? Or teams that are more specific than orgs, or folders. A permission on a folder is more specific than the permission on its parent folder, right? Although I'm inheriting, the permission is a little more specific. And then, of course, you can combine in other rules as well that can happen dynamically. Maybe you have a generic block list or a deny list, right? Or you have specific flags on the resource, like is visible is false, or is public is false, or hidden is true, right? So when we kind of think about all of these different kinds of things, what I started working on, and I'm going to show you kind of a quick preview now, is putting together a guide to start thinking about this easily, right? So let's take a Google Drive kind of example, right? And then we kind of start to flesh that out. But in this scenario, we have users and teams, right? Users can have access to folders, team can have access to folders. Users will inherit permissions from their team, but specific permissions for a folder for a user will override that, right? Folders themselves have parent folders, and folders will inherit permissions from parents or grandparents or ancestors. Oops. And then we have, again, the same kind of specificity where specific permissions of folder can override the parent folder permissions, right? So let's kind of take a look at what that kind of looks like through a app that I have run here. Hopefully, folks can see. All right, I was on a bit of a time crunch to come up with a good folder hierarchy. And I have no idea why, but this is kind of what I came up with. There is a design project, and the design project is for a house. And there's an indoors and an outdoors to the house. And the indoors also happens to have a kitchen. So that's kind of my folder hierarchy, right? I have a design project folder, right? Like maybe I'm an architect, and I have a house that I'm working on. And that house then has an indoors and an outdoors. And the indoors also has a kitchen. So like that's kind of the folder hierarchy where I'm going to be putting in different plans, right? So there's kind of a folder hierarchy there. And if I have access to kind of a parent folder, I get access to the children, right? Unless there's an override. So that's kind of one piece of this model, right, that we're looking at here. And then I can kind of start granting access to specific kind of teams and users, right? So let's take a look at what kind of teams and users look like. Right. So we have teams, and so there are multiple teams. There are multiple users. Each user can have access to specific folders, but then there are also teams. Teams can also have access to folders, and then users belong to teams, right? So we have to have kind of modeling to capture that piece, right? And then we'll assign specific permissions to people to see how that's kind of coming together. And so again, that's kind of pretty straightforward to capture. What you do is you have, let's say, I have a team and I have a user, right? And then I have a user underscore team, which contains the mapping of which user belongs to which team, right? And so let's kind of start pottering about with permissions. So first, we have kind of folder here, and the way in this model that, especially given the amount of complexity that we have in kind of different kinds of combinations and tools and things, right? What I really want to do is when I, as a user, I'm accessing this folder, right? What I want to be able to enforce is a very simple concept, is to say this folder probably has a list of allowed users. How that list of allowed users comes together is complicated. But let's treat that as a black box for a second. I have a folder. This folder is going to have allowed users. And if that list of allowed users for this folder contains the current user, I get access to it, right? That's it, right? As if it was a flat access control list. right? There was an access control list somewhere that had folder ID, user ID, and I could just reference that, look that up, and enforce a permission, right? So that's kind of the first thing that I want to do to kind of enable permissions on this folder model, right? And so what I've done here is I've set up a permission for a user, right? And I've set up a relationship to a permissions table, which is kind of this access control list table, right? And this access control list table somehow contains the right users that can access a particular folder. I don't know, we'll go into how that kind of system was created, but assuming that that system exists, this access control works, right? So just to kind of try that out in action and to see where this permissions table is, I'll show you where this permissions table is. This is kind of that access control list, right? This is not written by hand. This is computed from folder hierarchy and team hierarchy and user specific things. We'll ignore how it came together, but somehow it's come together and I have access to folders and users, right? So it says folder 1 is accessible by user 1, so on and so forth, right? So let's just go ahead and add in a quick example here to see what that looks like. So let's go to permission folder user. This contains the user specific permissions for a folder. So let's insert the outdoor thing. So let me see what the outdoor folder is called. So that's folder number 4. So let's give access to folder number 4, right? To user ID 3, right? So let me just quickly go ahead and create a user first. I don't know if I have a user ID 3. Okay, let's add a new user 3. All right, so I'm creating a new user for user 3. And for this user 3, I'm giving them access to folder number 4, right? I give access to this user for this particular folder, and now I have access, right? So somehow we kind of computed that, flattened that out into our access control list. Our access control list now contains this permission. And so I now have access to this particular entity, right? And very similarly, right? If I have a team and that team has access to a different folder, and the user belongs to the team, I'll get that access again. So let's just take a look at that in action before we kind of take a quick look at how that comes together, right? So for example, I have a team and team 2 has access to folder 3, right? So that's kind of something that I've already set up. Team 2 has access to folder 3. Just to take a look at what that looks like, let's go to the folder here and see what that really means. So team 2 has access to folder 3. So that means team 2 is going to see the indoors folder, right? And indoors also has a kitchen. The kitchen is usually indoors. We have an outdoors kitchen. And so I have an indoors kitchen here. And so if this team can access indoors, this team can also access kitchen. So let's go and enable that team for this particular user, right? Which is kind of what a typical collaborative action would be. So I kind of go in here and I say, well, user ID 3, you belong to team 2. And team 2 is my indoors team, right? And so let's go ahead and check that out now. And you'll see that now I get access to outdoors, but also indoors and kitchen, right? I didn't give this user an access to both of these folders. I gave the user access just to the team. The team had access only to the parent folder. And because of that, everything kind of got computed, right? And then similarly, overrides can be computed as well. So that's kind of the model. I'll be writing up a kind of a detailed post on how this works, but the kind of core of this idea is really simple. The core of the idea is that what we really want to do, right, is we want to get to a place where we want to have a flattened list that is somehow computed, right? We have a flattened list of folders, users, and access types, right, that are kind of computed, right? And so I can decide whether I have access to a particular resource or not. And what we do here is that we construct this using a view, and that you can then kind of compose different pieces of this, right? And so I won't go into too much detail here, but to kind of just show you what this view looks like and what an example extension of this looks like is. So what this view does is that it kind of flattens the folder. So it looks at all of the ancestors and then adds up, coalesces those permissions. It also does a lookup on the user and team structure, coalesces those permissions, and then unions that, coalesces/unions that into one piece that then gives us a very flat tuple. This folder ID, this user ID, true, false, right? That's what we get. The nice thing about this structure is that it's super extensible. This style of thinking is really easy to extend. For example, suppose in the future, I had to add this really kind of weird, complicated feature, which is the folder can have a blacklist. right? Or can have a block list, and it can have like some admin can go in and just say this user, this folder not allowed, right? I don't care what your hierarchy is. You're just kind of blocked from accessing this particular folder, right? And so what I can do is easily extend that by capturing a folder ID by using something like an accept, capturing for unioning that, adding it to the same view. I can add this other condition as well to say, if it's as long as it's also not in folder common user from the block list, right? So I can have a block list table, and then I can add that as well to my query to get the final result, right? So this pattern is pretty generic, and I'll do a write-up and we'll share kind of what that looks like. But this should kind of allow you to start to extend this in really kind of complicated hierarchical ways, and can be as dynamic as you want it to be. You can add multiple levels, teams, users, orgs, whatever, right? And you can kind of keep incrementally adding that as well. So that is what this piece looks like. And once we have a write-up, I'll share that with you folks. Let me just see if there's any questions here. All right. Cool. So that is what this piece looks like. In the generic, the super kind of general pattern that emerges here is pretty straightforward, right? The idea is to just say that, I have models. The model has a ACL table. The ACL table is not actually a table; it's computed, and the permission rule is now really simple, right? This is not what you always have to do. This is nice to do when systems start to get really complicated, but you can always mix and match, right? You can always Boolean that with other things that you have. So we'll kind of write this up and we'll share that across, including this presentation and the sample application as well, so that you folks can start kind of using that and referencing that in their applications. Two other super quick things that I shall link to in the chat. The first is the parameterized query spec. And so there's a bit of a monster specification, which I'm going to list to in the chat. All right. So this spec here is what we were kind of talking about last time, where we'll have, instead of having to create views, like the views that I was creating in fact today to show you the kind of hierarchical assembly. Instead of creating those views, we'll just be able to register SQL queries at the Hasura level, and you won't need to do any DDL on the database. It'll just be a part of the Hasura metadata, and that'll kind of make it super fast to iterate on things and not have to do a bunch of DDL or in certain cases, complex customizations that might be hard. So, so this kind of makes a bunch of that easy. This spec kind of talks about how that will be exposed, how relationships would work, how permissions would work. So do give it a look, and would love to see your comments on the issue. If you have any questions and if you have any feedback at all. So that is the parameterized query spec that I've linked you folks to. The next piece is an improvement to CI/CD guide, just kind of a listing out of best practices that we've had. So here you go. All right. So this kind of talks about how you can kind of move from a running Hasura project on the cloud, on Hasura cloud, or on wherever it's hosted actually. And then you can kind of initialize local development from that. And then again, you can move from local development to Hasura Cloud or to any other Hasura project on the cloud as well. So kind of just lists out a recipe that you can use to get started with that. And this should again be useful for folks both doing managing multiple environments, even trying out the GitHub integration. Another interesting piece of feedback that's recently come up that we're starting to work on is making it easy to test out some of the cloud features locally. So there's a little bit of kind of work that we have to do there, but we are working on that so that in case you want to test out some of those some cloud specific security features locally, that's going to be possible as well. So that kind of makes that entire development process easy. So do check that out. And again, if you have any questions, any feedback on the docs, please do let us know. But with that, that's my time. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I can take them on Slack, or then of course, I'm always available on Twitter and stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that amazing update, Tanmai. Sorry for the trouble that you had earlier, but that all looks really exciting, and I'm personally looking forward to the guide on authorization. That looked really cool. Okay, folks, we are ready to go ahead with the cloud updates section. So first off, Vaishnavi is going to show us and talk about the GitHub integration upgrades. Let me give you a quick recap. This was a feature that we launched last month, and we've been working very closely with our early access users on. So with the new GitHub integration, you can now deploy your local migrations to staging and production by a simple Git push. And Vaishnavi is going to showcase some upgrades that we've made with the UX and a few different things. So Vaishnavi, whenever you're ready.
Hey folks, I'm Vaishnavi from the product team at Hasura. Let me just share my. So first up in our cloud updates, we have the GitHub integration. So after closely working with our early access group, we've made a couple of UX upgrades. Let me quickly go over those for you. So if you're a brand new user trying out our GitHub integration feature, you'll be able to get access to the documentation and the GitHub starter kit right from your dashboard right now. And so next up, if you are facing any issues in your deployment at any point of time, you'll be able to access our troubleshooting guide. So what we've done is that we've populated it with the most frequently encountered errors and how to resolve them. And in case you do not resolve your issue through the troubleshooting guide, you can always reach out to us through the GitHub discussions page, specifically for the GitHub integration feature. You can also directly access your migrations and metadata files right from your deploy log. And the next thing we have here is we have a migration status table from your GitHub deployment page itself. So what you can do here is you'll be able to easily track what migrations have been applied to your database and make sure that the right migrations in your repo are applied to your database. So as Tanmai mentioned, we have also updated our managing development environments document. So you can easily now move from your local setup to Hasura Cloud while using GitHub integration as well. So next up is a big thing. We have caching now enabled for free tier. So please go ahead and try it out. Use our @cache directive and try out a couple of response caching, and do let us know how you feel about that. Next, we have the option of requesting for a Hasura dedicated VPC right from your cloud dashboard. So as a couple of our users have requested for a VPC-like setup due to compliance requirements, security, etc., we have now started rolling this out on a request basis. So with this, you'll be able to connect your own networks and VPCs through a secured connection away from the public internet. You'll also have better isolation in terms of your Hasura project's placement, and this will also be ideal for your compliance requirements. So the use case is pretty simple. If you have a network on AWS, or that you're using managed services like Ivan or Timescale that run on AWS, and you want to privately connect your database to Hasura, you can request for a dedicated VPC. So with our dedicated VPC, you will be able to create multiple projects within your dedicated VPC. We have the option of Hasura to customer peering in situations where you would want to connect to an RDS or a webhook within an AWS VPC. And in the other situation where you want to connect from a managed service like Ivan or Timescale to the Hasura cloud, we have the option of customer to Hasura peering. If instead of having a full-fledged VPC, you have a secure AWS private link endpoint, you can always request for a private link from your Hasura cloud to your AWS private link endpoint. So do check it out. You can request for the Hasura dedicated VPC or the private link from your cloud dashboard today. I'll now hand it off over to my colleague Aishwarya, who will walk you through the VPC peering workflow.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen. So I'm Aishwarya. I work on the cloud dashboard team. So I'm going to take you through the workflow of how you can set up a dedicated VPC on your Hasura Cloud account. I hope you all can see my screen. Okay, so once you have access to a dedicated VPC section, you can head over to the VPC section on our dashboard, and you will be able to see a list of all the VPCs that you have in your account. You can also request for a creation of a new VPC. You can just click on the create new VPC button. Provide us with the region where you want the VPC to be provisioned. You can provide us with the VPC name and a valid CIDR block. and just hit on the create VPC button, and the request for a new VPC would be created. Our team will validate your request and activate your VPC. So once your VPC is activated, you will be able to create projects under your VPC, and you can also raise requests for peering connections. So to do that, you can head over to the VPC settings. In this section, you will be able to see the VPC details. You also have an option to edit the VPC name. You can head over to the project section where you will see the list of projects under the VPC. You can also create new projects under this VPC. And in your project details section also, you can see the VPC that it's been created under. And if you want to migrate any of your existing projects to a VPC, you can reach out to our team and we will help you migrate your projects. So a dedicated VPC can also be paired with any of the networks that you own on AWS or any managed services that run on AWS. Like Vaishnavi already explained, so to do this, you can initiate a peering request. You can just click on the initiate peering request button, and we have two types of peering requests. One is the Hasura to customer. This can be done when you want to connect to a webhook or an RDS. So you can provide us with the peering name and the AWS account details and your VPC ID, the VPC that's on AWS, and the VPC CIDR block. And once you hit on initiate peering request, the peering request status will be request pending, and our team will validate your request. And once it's been provisioned, the status will change to action required, like you can see here. At this point, you will have to head over to your AWS account and accept the peering connection request. Once you do this, your peering request will be activated. The other request, the other kind of peering request that you can request is a customer to Hasura. So this can be done when you want to connect to a third-party service. You will have to raise a peering connection request from your third-party service. To do this, we have provided a few details in the form itself. You can use these details to raise a peering connection towards Hasura Cloud. Once you do this, your third-party service will be providing you with a few details, and you can use those details to fill in the form below and hit on the initiate peering request button, and this would create a peering request the same way like before. In this case, our Hasura team will validate your request and activate your peering connection. So once your peering connection is active, you should be able to use private IP addresses and private DNS names as database URLs and webhook URLs. So this is how you work with a VPC. But right now, VPC is available only on request. So for you to get access to it, you can head over to the VPC section on your dashboard, and you will see a form where you can provide us with the region where you want the VPC to be provisioned, and you can provide us your organization details. And if you have any other requirements for your VPC, you can provide us those as well. And someone from our team will reach out to you and help you set up a dedicated VPC. Yeah, that's all about VPC. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaishnavi and Aishwarya. Those were really cool updates and demos on your end. Several of our users have requested for a dedicated VPC, and we wanted to make this workflow a little easier for you and also showcase it here at the community call. So thank you for your demos. Moving on, we now have Sam to show us a bit about the GraphQL WebSocket protocol, which is a new protocol for GraphQL subscriptions aiming to become the de facto standard for GraphQL. So Sam will be demonstrating the newly added support for GraphQL-ws in Hasura.
Hi everyone, my name is Samir, or you can call me Sam. I'm from the server engineering team here at Hasura. So yeah, I have an update about GraphQL-ws support over on the GraphQL engine. Okay, so yeah, this is confetti time. GraphQL-ws is finally supported on the GraphQL engine. So it's out in the wild too. You can go to Hasura Cloud, and whenever you create a new project with, and if it has a version of 2.0.7, Cloud.3, like you'll be able to use your GraphQL-ws clients. So this has been a really popular issue on our open source repo. There's been a lot of activity, and from a long time, we wanted to deliver on this, and we're happy to do that now. So just before I show you something, I just wanted to give some folks a quick primer on WebSockets and GraphQL. So we had two main protocols, which we still use and supported on GraphQL Engine. So one of them is the subscription transport WS, which was maintained by Apollo. And now GraphQL API has come up to become the de facto standard. So what do you mean by these protocols? What do these protocols help in? So basically, it's just a mechanism in which clients and servers, WebSocket servers, talk to each other. You'll describe the kind of messages, the kind of payloads they can consume and provide to each other. So that's about it. So that's the importance of protocols. So the quick demo I have is I have a project running in cloud. This is production. So I just have a user stable, and then I have some users, Sam, Bam, Can, Ham. They got a nice ring to it, all my users. So you can run a query, a normal query. Let me just minimize this. Okay, cool. So so I have a query to get users. So when I send, you see that I get back some data. This is a normal query, and then the server also sends a complete message saying that I won't send any more messages to the client. So yeah, Sam, Bam, Can, Ham are here. This also works with subscriptions. So let me just clear this. So let me just send this and subscribe. Yes, so we have active subscription. So I'll keep this running. And let's insert another user with mutation, and let's see if subscription also gets updated in the meanwhile. So subscribe, next, complete. So we've got a new user called Boom. Yeah, so we've got a new next message with Sam, Bam, Can, Ham, and Boom. So all three major operations are supported now using GraphQL API. One way how you can verify is by going to headers and looking into the WebSocket protocol, and then if it says GraphQL transport WS, it's using GraphQL API protocol. So yeah, that's about it. Just to show that we're live with GraphQL API. And yeah, thank you. I'll be sticking around if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was a great demo. Also really cool usernames you've got there. So thank you so much for that demo. Moving on, we have our demo by Lyndon. Lyndon couldn't be here with us today, but we have the recording. So let's talk about self-signed HTTP webhooks. Sometimes you may have HTTP endpoints connected to Hasura, which are secured via self-signed TLS certificates. Now, this would throw an invalid CA error sometimes. And in this demo, what Lyndon is showing is you can now add custom domains to Hasura metadata to allow using webhooks with self-signed TLS certificates. So let's see how that happens.
Hi, everyone. This is Lyndon from Hasura. I'm talking to you now because I'd like to introduce you to an upcoming feature that we're calling TLS allow lists. As part of its operation, the GraphQL engine talks to other services. For example, through actions, you can hit other REST APIs via GraphQL queries to Hasura, which will then forward them onto other REST services. And depending on how your engine is configured, send back GraphQL responses. Now, this works very well, except in the case when these services are using self-signed TLS certificates, but you don't have the ability to configure your host to have these in its keychain. This occurs quite frequently in development and staging environments, but may also occur in certain situations in production as well. The new feature TLS allow lists intends to address this by providing the mechanism to add services which are whitelisted for self-signed certificates. This can be done via an incremental API or via the replace metadata API. I'll give you a short demo of how this currently has an issue and then how the new feature addresses this. So I'll just share my screen. I have several actions here, but the two I want to show you are this first action, which will hit a local service on a non-TLS port, and then a variant which will hit that on, you can see here, HTTPS on port 443, which will be using self-signed certificates. So I'll quickly show you the service in question. So this service is just a little authentication dummy application, which will take a username and password and give you back a test token. We're running in HTTP on port 8081, and then we're running in TLS mode on 443 with our self-signed certificate. So I'll just spin that up and then we can get underway. Great. So I'll show you currently how that will work with the regular HTTP variant of the service. So with any old username and password, we should get back our test token, a highly secure application. But when we go to use it via SSL, we should see a horrible service failure. There you go. Now let's add this host to our whitelist. So just again, here the action by SSL, we've got this host pointing back to localhost. So when we add that host to our whitelist, we should then be able to use it as we can use the HTTP variant. So this is the incremental API, add host to TLS allow list. Now you can just specify an entire host. If you want to, you can also be specific about what port it's running on. And you can also be explicit about what you want to whitelist. Now, at the moment, the only thing that you can whitelist is the ability to allow self-signed certificates, but in future, we may extend that. So I'll just run this API now. And thankfully, we see success. Now back in our application, when we hit the SSL service via Hasura, we get back our test token as we'd wanted to see. So that's the gist of the feature. You can also use it via the batch replace metadata APIs, but very soon we'll also have console support for this feature as well, for a much more user-friendly experience. But as of today, you should be able to use it via the metadata APIs. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you later.
All right, folks, that was Lyndon's demo on TLS allow list. Now, I know that Lyndon mentioned earlier in the demo that the TLS allow list feature is not yet live. But that was the case when he recorded this demo. The feature is now live and you can try it out. And if you have any questions, you can leave that in the chat and we will make sure that we can help you get them answered. The next demo that I wanted to show is by David. That is the remote schema customizations. Now, the remote schema customizations is a feature where it changes the way Hasura lets you expose the GraphQL APIs in a better way for your remote schemas. So let's see David's demo.
Hi, my name's David. I'm a backend developer at Hasura. Today I'm going to be talking about a new feature called remote schema customization. This feature allows us to make some modifications to a remote schema as we're importing it. The main purpose of this is to prevent name conflicts between schemas and other data sources. It can also allow third-party schemas to be customized, better fit in with local naming conventions. Customizations we have available. So first thing we can do is add a root field namespace to the schema. So it's a new top-level field in our GraphQL schema that all of the fields of the remote schema will sit under. We can also customize the type names and field names of the schema by adding prefixes or suffixes or explicit mappings between names. I will show a demo now. So I've got this remote schema that I've added to my Hasura instance. At the moment, it doesn't have any of the customizations applied. So let's have a look at it. So we've got two top level fields, hero and heroes. Within those fields, we have some other fields, ID and name. And we have, so this is an interface here. So we've got some types that also have other fields within them. You can type name on here and see what it looks like here. So we've got a list of heroes here. Pretty straightforward. But now I'll show you what I can do to customize that. So the way we need to do that is we will need to delete the schema from here. And we need to re-add it via the API. We don't currently have a console UI for doing the customization. So we're going to do it directly with an API call. So let's have a look at what we're going to do. So we've got this customization object within our add remote schema API call. We're going to add a root field namespace called Star Wars. We're going to prefix all the types with my, and we're going to prefix the field names within these types with the prefix super underscore. So let's send that to the server. Just check, yes, that succeeded. And let's go back here now, reload this. Our schema is back here, but now let's have a look at the API. So instead of those top little heroes fields, we now have a Star Wars field. And if we open that up, we can see the heroes fields are within that. You can open that up and see that all these fields here are prefixed with that super prefix and the type names are prefixed with my. We can run a query on these. Let's add in the type name as well to see what that does. We run that here and we can see the result also has the namespace prefix, sorry, the namespace field and the super prefix, and the type names also have that prefix that we added. So that's basically it. I will say this feature is available now. We're currently working on doing a similar feature for database sources, so that will be available soon. Thank you.
That was about it for all of our engineering demos. So as you know, as you saw, self-signed HTTP webhooks feature and the remote schema customizations. Regarding the TLS allow list feature, it's already live, and the console support, the PR for the console support is in the merge queue. So that should be out in the next release for you to try out. And remote schema customizations is something that you can already try out, and we'll be working on more customizations. Now, without further ado, let me hand it over to Dan to present his demo on how to build text-based communication systems using Hasura and Twilio.
Thanks so much, Vish. Yeah, really cool updates in here, and thanks for having me. Yeah, so I'm actually, there's the other two engineers from Prophone are on this call as well, but I'm the CTO of a company called Prophone. We centralize and streamline communication for service professionals, which generally includes like plumbers, lawn care professionals, electricians, like all these folks that, you know, sort of small business, typically less than 10 people probably. And they face a lot of issues around communicating, and particularly they lose a lot of leads that they pay for because they're on jobs and things like that. So that's what we do, and we currently use Hasura and Twilio to do so. We more or less started this company in January of this year, and the company started back in January. We went through Y Combinator, raised some money after that, and recently hired some new folks, and now we're here. And so due to a sort of little bit of a critical error yesterday, I my slide presentation is going to be a little bit limited, but I'm still going to show it. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. This has been a minute since I have had to do this, so you'll have to forgive me. This is like calling on high school skills right now with the screen sharing and stuff. Give me a moment here. So I want to start with why we picked Hasura in the first place. And largely that was because of the speed with which we get started. I had built things using GraphQL in the past, and it can be fairly cumbersome to manage a lot of this stuff, and I knew that I didn't want to spend the time doing that again. And so Hasura seemed like a very, I think I was picking between that and one other thing. I knew that since we were going through Y Combinator and I needed to stand this up very quickly, that this would take care of a lot of the resolver kind of issues and give me a lot of the functionality that I wanted right out of the box. And so that was the big motivation. I did know that I was going to face a lot of problems with Twilio, but not nearly as many as we ended up actually facing. And so I don't know if anyone has, on this call utilized Twilio, but it can be really easy at times and straightforward, and very many other times it is just an absolute headache. It is insane to me that this is a public company. And so let's get into how we actually use Twilio at Prophone. So we use a number of Twilio's different services, some of their primary ones. The more popular ones will be phone numbers and voice, and that is utilized for when these pros are either creating or porting their phone numbers to be sort of their business phone number rather than their personal number. We use Twilio to manage those phone numbers, as well as making calls, voicemails, things like that through Prophone, subsequently through Twilio. So the other chunk of things, of the functionality that we have, revolves around sending messages, MMS, SMS, that kind of stuff. And for that, we use a new service Twilio offers, relatively new that is, called Conversations. It allows you to manage the conversations themselves, the users, and most notably, sending notifications to devices. It's really cool. You get to have your users. I can show you sort of our app running. So here, I am able to send a message from our application, and users will receive it as text messages. And when those same users send messages from their phones, they will be seen here. And so you can centralize all of this communication, and each party will get notifications. In order to achieve that, we use Twilio's messaging and Conversations. And then Notify is another service that we use for just sort of custom notifications that we want to send here or there. How does this work overall, and how does this begin to, on our end, work with Hasura? We have our client applications, like our mobile app, our website generator. Currently, they talk either directly to Hasura, or they talk to, oh, sorry, I forgot one in here, which is Auth0. So they will talk to either Hasura, Auth0 directly, or the Express server that we have. And then for deployment, we use Expo, which has a CI/CD service. Here sort of in lies one of the issues or one of the challenges that I would say that we face most often. Hasura does not generally currently for us talk to Twilio, and that's one of the exciting challenges that we have ahead of us, is to really pull away from this Express server that overall, one of our challenges is to keep the data in sync, right? Between Twilio, between Hasura. I have actually pulled them up here on our end. This is our development environment. And so as you can see, there's these business context conversations and stuff like that. And not all of the information that we store, that we have in Twilio is in Hasura. And so it's really using the IDs and things like that to keep things in sync that allows us to do what we do. One of our challenges then is to try to make it so that the client applications purely talk to, excuse me, Hasura. And that is something I'm very excited about. What Hasura, though, has allowed us is to not worry so much about getting the data to the client applications in a way that allows our customers to have their business depend entirely on our platform, right? So that's where I would say we spend most of our time. The Express server basically entirely exists to facilitate that connection, right? And make sure that if data is being created in Twilio, that there is a mirror of that or some kind of representation of that in Hasura. Other places, I just think that we are not utilizing Hasura to the extent that we can be, and that's why I'm so excited to be, you know, a member of this community and hearing the kind of things that are coming up, because these are all things that I feel like, you know, Hasura is sort of this extension of our own team, and so I want to provide more answers to the sort of Twilio experience. I think that just would be sort of its own talk, and so if anybody has any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them in the community chat, but it's just a very extensive platform with a lot of pain points. And so that's a little bit about how we use Hasura and Twilio together. I think it'll become more sophisticated over time, and I'm excited to see, you know, how Hasura makes that just so much easier for us. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dan. It was great to hear from you. And yeah, I remember a lot of people, a lot of our users asking from time to time for resources around using Hasura with Twilio. So it was really, when I was speaking to you, it was really nice to see that someone is using this in production. And so I was excited to hear from your end, like your experience, your story building around Hasura and Twilio, like this suite of these two powerful technologies and the kind of challenges you have, because technologies can be as good as they are, but when you put two or three things together, you kind of face those challenges with integrating them, and that's where the community and the resources around it really help. So it would be great if any of like anyone from the audience is working with Twilio with Hasura, or if you are facing similar challenges, I'm sure Dan would love to chat with you. And relatedly, Dan is going to be in New York for a few days. And what we were planning to do was have our first in-person meetup, or like a casual meetup in New York City. So we have opened a channel. Let me quickly share my screen to show that. We have a channel on our Discord that you can join if you're part of our Discord already. You can go to Hasura in New York and you will see Harsha, Eli from Hasura, me and Dan. We are there. And if you are in New York and want to meet a few other people from the Hasura team or the Hasura community, please join this channel and we can hash it out there. So
yeah, I was hoping for next week to be the happy hour, and so we'll just, you know, it'll be a casual meetup at first, and then we can kind of get into the nitty gritty of maybe some talks and like how people are using things. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Also, yeah, I think Dan, you have someone in the chat who wants to connect with you. So make sure you reach out to them. And moving forward, just wanted to quickly share a few exciting things on the community stuff with you folks. The Hasura Data and API show, we have a few different episodes coming up. And some of the recent episodes are also here in this playlist. So Praveen showed a really cool implementation and usage of the GitHub, the newly launched GitHub integration. So if that's something that you want to check out the recent stream. Jesse also joined Aman from DraftBit to build low-code applications using Hasura and DraftBit, and that happened this week, so check that out. And some of the upcoming streams are by Gavin and Adrian. Gavin will be building a meetup clone with Hasura, and not just building a clone, but like putting together all of the data, like showing us how to conceptualize data models, how to like go about thinking about data models, and then actually building the entire backend of the application and getting it up and running. And Adrian will be joined by Jeremy from Pluralsight, and they will be building serverless.NET applications on Azure and Hasura. So that's something that I'm really excited about. Make sure you catch the Hasura Data and API show. The link will be sent to you on your email. We have 2 upcoming webinars. The first one is on GraphQL observability. You will be learning how you can debug and analyze query performance in your Hasura applications using Hasura features that help with monitoring and observability. So that's happening on September 7th, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Keep your eyes peeled for that. The second one is full stack GraphQL applications with Nest.js and Hasura. That one is a 90-minute workshop on how you can build full stack GraphQL applications using Nest.js, the Nest.js framework, TypeScript, and Hasura. Now, if you've stuck with us for a long time, and if you've been joining us for our Hasura community calls, you might remember that Jesse Carter, another community member, shared a really cool demo of a plugin that they built for using Nest.js and Hasura together, integrating it. So that's also something that you might want to check out. And yeah, keep your eyes peeled for the webinar on September 2nd at 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's it for the events and stuff. And finally, help us make our community call better. If you like this one, or if you have any things that you didn't like, we're always wanting to improve our community calls and improve the overall experience for you folks. So let us know if there's anything that you liked, did not like, if you feel like there's anything you want us to improve, or you would want to see something else in the next call, please let us know through our feedback form, which will be sent to you on your email. Also, if there's a project that you want to showcase, or a contribution that you'd like to talk about, or you want to share your experience with the others of using Hasura, just like Dan and Jesse and Nick and so many other community demo presenters did in the previous community calls, feel free to reach out to us through our community call demo form. And who knows, maybe you might be the next one presenting at the community call, and we'd love to have you. And the Hasura community calls happen on the last Thursday of every month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So make sure you join us and save the date and time. The next community call is happening on September 30th at the same time. So you can register it by going to this page right here. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us, folks. This was a delight. Bye, everyone.